Well, this has been most unusual so far, I must say. Now, I do feel a little, of course, for this poor girl, Elise, I really do, but I confess the whole thing, well, it seemed not really my business. Still, Mr. Ljung is a friend, so I've agreed to help him as much as I can. I admit it does seem as if this Dr. Mild is up to something a little nefarious, so perhaps we are doing a good deed after all. I even admit the idea of breaking into his home did make me a little anxious, but slightly excited me as well. My father would certainly disapprove, so that's always a bonus. However, I'm hopeful that we're able to help this young lady out and get all this sorted out. And then I can return my attentions back to what is actually important, the artifacts at the exhibition. Yes, this little adventure is all well and good, but I'm looking forward to when things can return to normalcy. This is Red Moon Role-Playing.
It is Sunday, August the 8th, and you are at Tennstupet, a famous haunt for artists and journalists. After Rutger Wrangel's lecture at the Fine Arts Academy, you follow the large group that had attended that to this restaurant. You're at the bar counter, having just ordered food La Paloma, the dove, meaning that you get the food, the drinks, and the food goes right back into the kitchen without you touching it. What are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking a very strong brandy.
I'm drinking mineral water.
You had left that basement, hurrying out together with a catatonic Elise. You saw that creature shuffling towards the lake, looking back at you one more time before submerging itself and disappearing in Lake Mälaren. Dr. Mild and two others, probably people in his employ at the house, had been ripped to shreds. At least that's what it sounded like, and the blood spatter indicated as much. You didn't necessarily want to look. Who would? But what happened then? What did you do with the evidence? Did you call the police?
Well, there were a few different pieces of evidence, weren't there? There were folders and also a book. The folders with some more explicit material of the operation of Dr. Mild. And I thought it fascinating, and I was wondering to myself if anything of this could be useful for another man of science. Me, I'm an antiquarian, and the book itself seemed old and very fascinating, albeit written in German. And I decided to keep that for myself.
Yes, the book Unterseekulten by Graf Gauberg. It's from 17th century Hamburg. You can see that it was printed by Hermann Schiller in 1669. The front of the book carries a woodcut drawing of the kind of fish-like creature you saw depicted in the Kingshaven grave. Unfortunately, as you said, the book is in German and you couldn't really make out much else, but it does seem to pertain to these kinds of creatures and, well, the name of the book, Untersee, Under the Sea, Cults?
I find it interesting, and especially being able to date it so far back. I would try and use my associates and my contacts that would be able to speak German and with whom I might be able to discuss this find.
So you have gotten this book then to them, or have you given it over and to have it translated perhaps so that you can read it in its entirety, or what have you done? Would you have set up a meeting with them to look at it together?
Would there have been an initial meeting first, and after understanding that they were able to do it, I would have handed it over for them to give me a transcript bit by bit as they finish it.
Yes. Well, then that has begun, but it will take some time. It is quite a thick book, after all, and you are busy with many other things. Anna couldn't stop thanking you as you got Elise back to her. She was very pleased.
Yes, and as we did, we of course had we had to tell her as much of the story as we could. Elise herself seemed in pretty bad shape. She witnessed something that I mercifully was not able to see. Only the aftermath, which was very bloody.
Yes. But fortunately, it at least seemed like Dr. Mild hadn't had time to conduct any experiments on her. Nothing had been replaced or added.
At least she is physically whole. And after seeing the things and the operation, and finding out a bit about what he has done, reading these folders, I could see a bit more about what exactly happened to Mr. Victor Credin, the man who revealed a most fish-like hand. What we saw there explained a bit more. I felt it my duty to go and report to him as well, and let him know what we had found and what exactly had happened to him. Since he had helped us, it seemed only the right thing to do.
Did you give him the folder with the pictures of him, of the operation that was done on him?
I would have probed him a bit first, as best I could. Let him know a bit more, that we knew more, and perhaps asked him if he wanted to know, and that I had evidence of it there.
Did you give it to him?
Well, if he wanted to see it. He was in a bad state and had us leave early the last time, so...
Yes. Well, he was quite adamant about keeping this, if you would let him keep it. He didn't seem to want anyone else to see it. It's, of course, him in a very compromised position. And, well, you wouldn't want pictures of you in that situation floating around, would you?
No, it seemed the right thing to do to let him have that upon his request.
Yes. Well, he was very grateful. And so was George Wiedbeck as well. What about the other folders? There was one that showed experiments being done on this being in the tank, of the height, weight, analysis of different body functions on it, photos of creatures like it with scales, tails, and claws on hands and feet.
Well, I suppose anything Fingal wanted, I would have let him have. I, after all, didn't want anything to do with any of it, and insisted that everything that wasn't to his own interests be left for the police. After all, while my friend was more concerned with looking at suspicious papers, I was concerned with closing the matter. I was the one who made the anonymous phone call to the police a few hours after we had safely got very far from the location, so that they could go there, discover what they could, close the matter, and we would not be involved anymore. After all, we could not explain why we were there, so best to let them not think we were there at all.
Did you leave the final folder, the one that showed the experiments on the 10-year-old boy, the one that wasn't so much experiments as torture? That would be damning evidence. That would have ended Mild, had he been alive.
Indeed, I wouldn't have wanted it. Again, though, it all seemed a little relevant, considering the doctor had been stopped permanently. As far as I was concerned, we had saved my friend's fiancée's daughter from a horrible situation, and a man who had been delving into things he shouldn't have had paid the price. While I may have had a little curiosity for the book that my associate had, for the most part I had been happy to have the police deal with it all and not speak of it again.
That is the simple way to get through this, isn't it? The police got a hold of the evidence that you had left behind, and you could see in the news in the following days how there was a story about these illicit experiments that had been done, and that Mild had most likely been murdered in retribution for what he had done to others. Some kind of poetic justice. The management at Konradsberg had to quickly step down for allowing Mild to cause so much pain to seemingly so many people. And other stories started to pop up. People stepped forward and told their stories about what he had done to them. So it seems like you did something quite good for the city. How have you dealt with it afterwards? How have you dealt with what you saw, has it caused you any grief or any trouble, difficulties to sleep, anything like that?
I've been drinking a little bit, if I'm honest, but I've managed to put it to the back of my mind, after all. Even though what I saw is a little unexplainable at first, I have, out of mainly an interest, often dabbled in the study of occult magics, magic tricks, that sort of thing. What I've learned is that a lot of things can seem, well, they can seem one way, but they're actually a different way. The doctor did something horrible to those poor patients, some sort of horrific mutilation to their bodies, maybe even some sort of science. It's still plausible. So, if I just think of it that way, it's all plausible and horrific, and I can put it to the back of my mind. After all, it's not like they were really fish people. That's impossible.
That is impossible. It must have been some strange experiment, of course. I mean, science is advancing very, very quickly, and there's many things that most people don't understand that are still very much possible to do with just regular science, the regular scientific method. Yes, of course. And what of you, Ljung? How have you dealt with it after this? Have you been able to sleep?
I have spent some nights up fairly late. I haven't been able to completely put this to rest. And I have been looking through the folders that we have kept. And I've been probing a little bit the more scientific friends I have, perhaps over a drink, relaxed, casually naming something, and then if they would be more interested, trying to see if they would like to look at the things and the folders, and I want to find this justified somehow, because there are vile transgressions being made here against people, and I want to somehow feel that there is reason here behind this. Why would people do this? Can it provide somehow some kind of healing or scientifically beneficial thing from all these strange experiments that he was conducting?
Well, what you understood from your friends is that there's quite a few scientists who they just follow their theories because they can. They follow the science because there's nothing stopping them. And in the case of Dr. Mild, it seems like the ethics that would normally apply to scientists, well, it wasn't something that was a burden to him at the very least. When it comes to the findings that you showed, your friends seem to mostly dismiss it as, well, the insane writings of some kind of twisted murderer, or, well, clearly someone who wasn't well mentally. You didn't get that much out of it, of your conversations with the scientists. They said that it seemed plausible, of course, in terms of the data. I mean, the data looked like, oh, well, this is something that could exist, but nothing like it has been seen, and there was no proof, aside from photographs, and, well, that kind of trick photography is not so difficult to do, after all. You can buy photos like that on the street corner if you want.
It's a sad bit of business, really. And maybe it's correct that he was just mad exploring this. Maybe he came by some exotic species of a fish that was half fish, closer to a lizard. That some kind of, yes, a large lizard, perhaps. A large species of salamander.
Yes.
Could have come from some part of the world, and he came by it and he wanted to do his ugly experiments on it together with people, and
Indeed. And in your memory, the memory of what you saw in the tank, it shifts more and more into that of a salamander. Yeah, that's what you saw. I mean, that explains it. Whew.
It does, and it is with some disappointment that I put these folders to the side in my archive of things and have to try and get some rest and some sleep so that I can continue with more real-world matters, and taking care of Anna and try to find things that make me more happy.
Indeed. And because of this, both of you are quite sleepy, really, here. You have joined for this after party, but neither of you are feeling particularly up for partying or long conversations into the night. You from the drinking, Crane, and you from the lack of sleep, Ljung. Well, you don't remember really all that much from Wrangel's lecture that you did listen to. Perhaps it is the lack of sleep that is influencing you a little bit here. You remember he seemed quite emotional, though, agitated, a little bit like he was in the session after the lecture at the National Museum. He had difficulties keeping his voice under control. The only thing that really came across clearly was his belief that the Minotaur represents the idea of the divine king, a legend that existed in the area around the Mediterranean all the way up until the emergence of Rome. You also remember very clearly how he ended this speech saying, "Already now my heart mourns that the Minotaur is packed in simple sawdust in a box in the museum's basement. It deserves better. It deserves to be seen." That is how that lecture ended, and people then started moving here to 10 Stupet, which is mostly empty. It is a Sunday evening after all. It is mostly just this crowd from Wrangel's lecture. Present are, aside from Cederblom and Wrangel, most of the people who attended the previous session at the National Museum. Major Bratt was also here, but he left almost immediately. There's one person that is new, that you do not recognize, around whom a small cluster has formed. He speaks Norwegian, but with a clear Russian accent. And he's currently excitedly speaking to Cederblom about the grave where the Minotaur was found. He's tall and handsome, with a well-groomed black beard and short hair, smoking a thin cigarillo, and he's dressed in what looks to be quite an expensive suit. His posture, there's something about it. It reminds you of soldiers you've met, like officers. It's not so strange for a Russian to be versed in military matters, of course, given all the troubles that have been going on there over the last decade. So you're standing there by the bar, and he actually comes up to you, speaking in Norwegian, which you can both understand given the similarities to Swedish, although perhaps somewhat less you, Crane, given that it is not your native language. "I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Popov, Dimitri Popov." And he holds out a hand to both of you.
I stifle a yawn, and I was looking at my glass before he comes up and see how the sparkles have sort of stopped popping up, and as I see him come up, I blink a little and I stand up to greet him properly. Good evening, I am Fingal Ljung.
Oh, Mr. Ljung, and you are?
Oh, pleasure to meet you, Crane. George Crane. A pleasure, Mr. Popov, yes?
Yes, that's very nice to meet you. What do you think about all this? The excavation, the grave, and this Minotaur?
Well, I can, in one way, I can agree with what Wrangel wrapped up with. It is a shame that it's not placed to be seen by people. I've heard a lot of things. I saw a photo of it, but I still have not come to see it myself.
Yes, but we're really looking forward to seeing it. It should be quite the exciting find. Again, I'm no experienced historian, but I'm aware that this could be quite a revolutionary find, possibly even giving us greater insight into the Minoan culture. I'm very much looking forward to it making its way to London.
Ah, yes, that would be quite something. I think it would be very good if this knowledge spreads across the world. Do you know any of the archaeologists? It seems like you were familiar with one of them before.
Yes, I am quite close to Mrs. Bernhardsson.
Yes, Dr. Bernhardsson, yes. And she has a daughter as well, doesn't she? Adopted from Kingshaven, if I understood correctly, from Cederblom and Wrangel.
I wrinkle my nose a little, wondering what this man's getting at with asking my friend such personal questions, but I just sort of remark quietly, "Yes. What's your interest in the exhibition then, Mr. Popov?"
Oh, I am very interested in archaeology in general, and this Minotaur. It is quite something, isn't it? It is special.
It certainly could be. Are you a academic then, or a collector, or
Oh, just very, very interested in history and archaeology. I would like to bring back more of this science back to Russia.
I'm finding myself straining a bit, trying to understand what he's saying, even speaking Norwegian with a Russian accent.
It is quite difficult to pick up, yes. And you feel again this tiredness, and you can't help but let out a yawn.
Yes, of course. I'm sure the Russian whatever institution museums would be most interested. Oh, please excuse me.
I'm sorry. I'm boring you. It was very nice to meet you, as I said. I hope to see you at the inauguration, he says, and nods politely and begins moving off. And you, Crane, you as well. You start to feel, like when someone yawns, right? It's infectious, right? You find yourself having to stifle a yawn yourself.
I do, and I follow it up with a bit of a smirk as I quietly remark to Ljung. Well, to be honest, he did seem a little bit of a bore.
Well, yes, quite so. I mean, no, he wasn't boring me. My manners are terrible. I don't know. I've not been sleeping the best beauty sleep since the events at the, villa.
I look down at my drink and take another sip. Yes, those events, You really should get some better sleep, Ljung. Speaking of which, how has Elise been? Is she a bit better now?
I watch Dimitri as he's leaving, looking after him. She's still quite poorly after the events. I should have looked after her more, I suppose.
Well, old man, you did your best, and that's all anyone could say. We did. And I kind of then just stop speaking and sip and look away somewhere else, almost as if I'm implying I don't really want to speak anymore about that particular subject.
Yes, it's curious that Mr. Popov himself here would be more interested in Elise. What was that about?
Frightfully impersonal, if you ask me. Barely know the man, asking about who is whose daughter.
They seem to make a point out of her coming from Kingshaven as well. When we've been talking, I've been having some wonderings myself about her reaction on that night when she saw some of the pictures and her possible connection. I know it's far-fetched, but now that someone else is showing particular interest, I can't help but... I can't help but think. Excuse me.
And Ljung, how has this made you feel about Elise? You felt she was mostly in the way before. An obstacle between you and Anna. Someone who would get in the way of the two of you spending time together. Has this changed with, you saving her life? Or do you still feel much the same?
I have felt a little bit of guilt for my previous feelings, and perhaps it is justified somehow that what she has felt is grounded in something. And if she is truly mentally ill, and now that she has suffered experiences that I myself can relate to, and in one way I share more with her than Anna, those particular events, I feel pity for her, and I wish there was something more I could do.
Yes. Speaking of which, she's not here tonight. Both her and Elise have remained at home, but you did promise to stop by at her place after the lecture, and you are feeling quite tired now. Hanging around here is feeling less and less, interesting.
Mr. Crane, I think it is time for me to call it a night.
Oh, of course. To be honest, I don't know. I'm getting a little impatient, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I really wish they'd just make the exhibition a little sooner. All this scientific talk. Not really my thing.
Well, they've waited 17 years until now to show anything. I suppose they see no rush in showing the rest.
I let out a heavy sigh, finish my drink, and then begin making to shake Mr. Young's hand. Well, old man, always a pleasure to see you. I wish you a good evening. And I kind of trail off a little.
I give you a nod and shake your hand as well, and take my hat and take my leave.
You do. And Anna lives in Söders Heights, in one of the red cottages between Katarina Church and Ersta Hospital. The cottage has 2 floors with a small garden complete with a bird bath. As you arrive, you can hear distant police sirens from the city. Not really all that unusual. The door is ahead of you. What do you do?
I look at the nearby brass plate of the name, and I try to make sure that my bow tie is positioned correctly. Even though I'm tired, I must adhere to style. Yes, and then is there a doorbell, or how do I...
Yes, there is. You ring the bell, and she opens the door. Looking through the peephole first, you see. And as she opens the door, you see that she's wearing a thin nightgown, and moves to give you a kiss as you arrive.
I kiss her back. Good evening, Anna. I'm sorry, it became maybe a bit too late, and I look at her
She just
nightgown.
She puts her finger to her mouth and says, "Don't, shh, she's asleep."
Oh, I see. Yes, and perhaps I should come back tomorrow then.
No. She kisses you again, and starts leading you into the house.
I put my hat on the hanger and take off my coat, and I try to be quiet about it. It feels a little bit exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. And you make love. How does all that make you feel?
It's taking me somewhere else. It's a bit fumbling at first, but I've had a long life. I think I know mostly what to do by now, and afterwards I feel a few years younger, and like a bit of a weight has been lifted from me as I lie there in the bed next to her, and have my arm around her and touch her hair.
Yes, and you're basking in the afterglow. Fingal. Thank you for saving her.
I wish I could have done more. I feel like maybe I wasn't taking her illness quite as serious as I should have.
Perhaps there's something we can do about that. She's dreaming of Kingshaven again. Elise is.
She's talking to you?
She is. She's dreaming of Kingshaven and the sea. She wants to go back there. I'd really prefer not to, but it is where she was born. Perhaps it will help.
Maybe there is something deeper to this, something from her past, something that happened, and perhaps it could bring closure to her in some way if we went there. I mean, if you would have me along.
I wanted to ask you to come with me. We might even be able to find something new for the exhibition. Nobody from the original group has been back there since 1910.
Are you going to ask me to bring along shovels and pickaxes? What do you call them?
I think that kind of digging has already been exhausted by the grave robbers. But there might be something else that has been brought forth by the winds and the elements. Who knows?
Did you ever have more contact with the amateur archaeologist that made the first find?
Leonard Sjöwall, yes. We've written letters once in a while. I think he might be able to help us to get over there. I can't say that I remember the path, so clearly it's not a proper road that goes there. It's just sort of a small country road kind of thing.
I've always liked the West Coast, if I'm honest. Coming from the north, somehow I always find it quite pleasant and relaxing, but not busy enough for a day-to-day life.
Yeah, me too. Well, do you think that friend of yours might want to come as well? Just, I know it sounds crazy, but just in case some of the villagers might hold a grudge still. They were really not happy with us last time.
Oh, George? Yeah, I know he's waiting very impatiently towards the exhibition actually being revealed, but he is a man who enjoys sights and doing things. I'm sure he'd be most happy to come along, and he doesn't seem to... Elise doesn't seem to mind his company either.
That's right. She did seem to, well, be quite interested in him being a foreigner and all that.
Yes, coming from the bigger city even.
Yes. And it continues a little bit like that, and you fall asleep. And you sleep well. Really well. And when you contact George to ask about this, what does George say? Is George up for the idea of going for a trip to Kingshaven?
I'm a little confused at first, because initially I asked why.
Well, it's about Elise. She has dreams about her, town of origin, I suppose, and maybe it's connected somehow to her illness. Maybe she can find closure, is what I'm trying to explain.
I suppose I understand that, old man, although I don't know if I'd agree, but I don't know why you want me to come along.
Oh, that was actually Anna who asked. I think she thinks you capable of keeping any fanatics off our backs.
Oh. Well, I'm not entirely sure I'd be that qualified for that. I suppose, old man, if you think it will help Elise a little, I'm happy to attend, but again, I hope it's not for too long. I can't really see the interest in going to a small village in the middle of nowhere.
Well, maybe it will somehow increase your connection to the exhibition. You could... maybe you could hire a photographer to come along and take photos, something to strengthen the whole thing with. If you want to keep taking it abroad and that, show the original place, the resting place.
Suppose I was a little interested in that. Hire a photographer, you say? It's not such a bad idea, actually. All right, then. Well, I suppose you managed to twist my arm, old man, but I hope something interesting occurs, because otherwise I think you're making my... I was already getting a little bit bored in the city, and you're telling me to trade it for a village.
No. I'm talking about a few days, not going to live there. I couldn't be away that long either.
Oh, very well then, old man, very well.
Time passes. There's a train ride to the west of the country, and you are then finding yourself driving along a country road that runs through Bohuslän parish, a beautiful, lush landscape with freshly harvested fields and small forest groves. Leonard Sjöwall, who you've met now, is driving. He's a middle-aged man with a bald head and grey mustache, tall and in good shape. He's currently wearing a nice shooting jacket and wool trousers. In the car is also Anna, Elise, the two of you, of course, and the photographer. Who have you hired?
Well, I would have hired a rather lovely young woman, actually, who I'd made the acquaintance of in the last few weeks. I almost feel this is a bit of an excuse to hang out with them a little more, and they just so happen to be a budding photographer. Christina Linda's their name. I think they're similar age to myself. Blonde curls, quite thin frame. They seemed very excited, although I don't think they know anything about where we're going. I just promised interesting photos.
Yeah, she's been very interested. And it seems like, she's taking a little bit of an interest in you as well. There seems to be something mutual going on there. So she seems very happy about the prospect here of getting to take some photos that might even end up being used in an exhibition. So she's with you there as well. She's right now fixing with her camera, making sure that everything is good with that. Elise is wearing her flapper outfit, albeit with hiking boots, and she's reading the morning's paper. Who do you think would be, of the two of you, who might end up looking at this paper?
I think I would, on the contrary, as it's a long journey and I'm already a little bit bored. I imagine Mr. Ljung, on the other hand, is probably looking over some notes.
That's absolutely correct. I am looking at some notes.
Well, Crane, you can't help but see some of the articles. It looks like there's riots and insurrection in Leningrad, Kronstadt, and Ukraine. The Soviet Union denying all claims of civil strife. There's also an article from Stockholm. A Russian shot dead on the street. Ilya Chernov, employed by the Soviet embassy, was found dead at Hazeliusbacken. Witnesses saw a car driving off at high speed towards the Djurgården bridge. The deed may have been politically motivated given the man's connection with the embassy. No further details were shared by the police.
I let out a bit of a sigh, remarking to the car in general, I say, you'd think the sort of thing would be getting sorted out. After all, we just had a major world shake-up. Well, hopefully people will see sense soon and all these new political movements will get their act together.
I look down and I keep working on my notes of it's an inventory of things that I really wish I could get rid of that hasn't proved to be quite as valuable as I hoped, seeing how I could market them, and I just keep looking at the notes while I say, I'm sure that is an absolutely astute observation, though I have no idea what you are talking about.
Oh, dear me. Christina, you see what I mean? Even though he is a lovable old man, really, Mr. Ljung can't help but sometimes play schoolteacher with me. It's rather irritating. I smile.
She giggles. I totally understand what you mean. And you're driving along this road, and there's eye-catching rock formations that cut through the fields that you're passing by. Towards the sea, as you get closer, most of the greenery disappears and it becomes a lot of bare rock. And at an old cairn, a pile of stones, Sjöwall says, well, here's where we turn towards Kingshaven. And here there's, again, greenery. The small road he's trying to turn into is overgrown with bushes. This place obviously doesn't see a lot of traffic. He parks the car. It's about midday now. Alright, from here we have to walk. Are you alright to do that? I hope you brought good shoes.
Yes, of course. And I look around, taking in a deep breath of the, I suppose, sea air.
Yes, it's quite fresh actually. A little bit of salt.
It is more salty on this side. I notice as well as I step out, and I have a nice hiking outfit, even a little cane to walk with.
I say, Mr. Cheval, are we going to be staying in a hotel of some kind? Does this place even have hotels?
Oh no hotels here. No, we just take a walk and we'll get into the village, we'll check out the grave. I think Elise mentioned that you wanted to visit her family's home. Was that right, Elise? Yeah, yes. I would like to see where my parents lived, if that's all right with everyone. Oh, of course, says Sjöwall, and looks to you. That is all right, yes?
I raise an eyebrow and just sort of speak to Anna for a moment, quietly saying, did Miss Elise know her parents? I kind of was under the assumption that she was rather young when you adopted her.
She was, but she remembers them.
Yes, and as they make this little hushed conversation, I nod and I feel to myself that it's good to hear Elise talking again after the ordeal. I haven't actually heard her voice much when I have visited either. Yes, of course, whatever we can do to put these thoughts of yours to rest.
Thank you. And Sheval speaks again. Well, yeah, we so we'll take a walk into the village. We will look at these places, and we'll try to head back before it gets dark. Last time we were there, it really... Well, it's not a place where you want to stay the night, if I can put it that way. And he looks to Anna. No, we should not spend the night there. I couldn't imagine doing that.
Well, I suppose we'll do as you say. A little time here, and then a car journey and a train journey. All the way back to Stockholm. Wonderful.
Yes, it's going to be good to come back in time. Not to take it too long, but I'll try to be flexible in case you feel like you need more time here.
Leonard starts leading you along this rocky ground. It's sort of barren, but there's a lot of bushes that are growing in from the side, so it's quite thick and difficult to get through. You definitely couldn't have gotten through here with a car. And the trees here, because there now starts to be not just bushes but trees as well, they look very old, which is quite unusual in this part of Bohuslän, so close to the coast. Leonard leads you further in, and you pass a simple farmhouse where the roof is caved in. Anna points it out to you, Ljung, and says, this is where we stayed back in 2009.
The bed and breakfast, was it?
Well, it was just a farmhouse. We stayed with a family that were kind enough to house us. I suppose they've left. Sheval answers to that. Yes, most of them have left, actually. They've emigrated. I guess to America? I'm not sure.
Well, good for them, I suppose. Times are hard. Not all of us. Not everyone is as lucky as we are.
Oh, that's true. And he continues leading you along this road, and after walking for about 30 minutes, you reach what must be Kingshaven, which is a sad collection of houses built around a small church. We'll go to the village later. Let's go to the grave first. We don't want to alert the villagers that we are here before we have seen what we wanted to see there. They might decide that, well, that we're trying to desecrate the grave again or something like that, and then that might spell trouble.
Oh, I see. All right then, you're the expert.
And he leads you to the grave, which is located on a hill in a dense forest about 50 meters from the Gullmarn Fjord, which is west of Kingshaven. The bark of the trees here are covered in fungi and lichens in clear colors, and there's rotting leaves and conifers that cover the ground. Ljung, as you're walking through these leaves, there's something crawling around underneath them. Colorful, turquoise, black, red, yellow. It's insects. But, I mean, you've been in the forest, haven't you? What the hell are those kinds of insects doing here? Swedish insects are brown or black.
This is peculiar, I say, and I look down. Look at these strange insects.
What's happened here? Sheval says. It's changed so much. And Anna is also looking at it with like big eyes.
The trees, it's like we were in autumn, but we're still in August.
I say, old man, what do you mean by changed? I say to Mr. Cheval. It doesn't always look like this. Are you saying there's more trees?
Well, yes, and they've grown a lot, and then they have aged quite dramatically. And these fungi and these lichens, I'm not used to seeing trees like this. I'm not sure what's going on. Well, anyway, the grave is just this way. And he points towards the tomb that is... It used to be a hill completely, but now it's been dug out. It is still on an elevated position, but you can see it from here. It is exposed. Do you move towards it, or what do you do?
I remarked to Christina, in passing, to maybe snap a few photos of these apparent suspicious trees. Granted, I have no knowledge of natural science, so to me, I'm just taking everyone's word for it that this is strange. It doesn't look that strange to me. But maybe it's interesting for a little snap that we can look at later. But as we approach the mound, I get a bit excited, and again gesture to Christina. Right, here you are. Here's where I'm hoping to get some good photos. Mr. Cheval, where is the strange symbols then? Are they within?
Yes, they are within the grave mound. So let us go there. And then Christina's, of course, she's got her camera out and she's taking plenty of pictures here, trying to document both the trees and then beginning to document the site as well. And yeah, it seems like she knows what she's doing.
Well, I'll be starting to walk around and see what they point out to me and see if I can make any references to what I have learned myself. These last days I have been spending some time with Anna and trying to learn more about this particular thing and learning more about archaeology happening from this time.
And you have seen pictures also, of course, from the excavations. The main thing that's changed is that when you looked at the site, it was these standing stones around this block that was on the ground. And then there was what you now understand must have been roof tiles that had been sort of placed within this circle of standing stones. The roof tiles have been removed, and so has the big block with the fish-like creature on it, the one that held the Minotaur. It has all been removed, and underneath this grave chamber, because that is what it must be, has been exposed. The block was 3 meters, but the stone coffin that is underneath is 5 meters long. It is dug into the ground, and the sides here are clad with slabs of granite. It is still in the middle of the day, and can you roll spot hidden, Ljung?
That is 18 under 41.
The 3-meter block that originally held the Minotaur is left next to the grave, and that one is covered with motifs of stars and fish. The stones that made up the roof tiles above the coffin are carved from red granite and must weigh about a ton each. Whoever did this must have had access to a proper winch. And the grave chamber, there's something a little bit odd about it. It remains a bit dark in there, in spite of the sun being high in the sky. It's very strange how the shadows seem to fall here. And you also find something that looks more new. A lot newer, actually. Recent. A crumpled pack of Cromwell cigarettes.
Cromwell cigarettes, I say, and I kneel down to pick it up.
There's Norwegian text on the back.
Like this. What does it say?
Oh, it's just the contents of the tobacco, that it is very healthy, that doctors recommend it, that sort of thing.
It seems we've had some Norwegian tourists, I say, and I hold it over to Mr. Crane.
I say, I think you're right. How strange. After all, there isn't really anything else here that, well, you couldn't just take a photo of. And as I say that, I instruct Christina to start taking photos of those symbols that I now look very closely at. Slightly interested now I can finally see them face to face.
Yes, and you're studying these symbols, and this leads you into to start looking at this uncovered grave area. The area where the coffin is placed. And there's something... Crane, there's a strange beeping sound that is coming from there, from the coffin.
From the open coffin?
Yes. It's a very intriguing sound. You should probably get closer and see what's causing that. That's strange.
Well, of course, I will cautiously just poke my head forward. I can't see anything, can I?
It's quite dark. You have to just get down into this lowered grave area. It is not that deep or anything like that. You could easily climb up again if you wanted.
Well, hang on a minute. I'm not a total fool. I'll whip out my lighter and just light it to just get a little more light. It's strange how dark it is.
Yeah, yes, and when you light it up with your lighter, it does become lighter indeed. And you look down on the floor tiles underneath the coffin, and there's intricate patterns on the stones. Very interesting patterns. They repeat themselves indefinitely. It's hypnotic.
Christina, over here, take some photos of...
And you kind of trail off as you say that, and you're seeing these patterns. They're repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, and you're seeing a court overlooking a planet surrounded by darkness, and indescribable beings are playing strange instruments. Roll for sanity.
7 under 40.
You lose 1 sanity. But you are mostly okay, though. And the beeping is inside your head, and... Ouch! There's an insect biting you.
I immediately drop my lighter as I make to swat whatever insect it is off me. I hate insects.
Yes, and you get it. Smack it, and you get that satisfying feeling of feeling it being sort of squished underneath your hand. And you look at your hand, and the blood from where it had bitten that has gone transferred to your hand, it's black. And you hear that strange beeping sound reverberating in your mind again, and it grows louder and louder and louder and louder and louder, and then it disappears. You have listened to an episode of Red Moon Roleplaying where we played the Kingshaven Minotaur for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. This adventure was written by our friends Gunilla, Jonsson and Petersen for the Swedish edition of Call of Cthulhu that is published by the fantastic folks at Eloso Publishing. The music is from the Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, Yog-Sothoth, Shub-Niggurath and Acetoth compilations by our friends at Chaosium. Check them out at cryochamber.bandcamp.com or their YouTube channel for more game music for your table. We've also used the official soundtrack for the Swedish version of Call of Cthulhu, composed by none other than our friend Andreas Lundström from Sweden Rolls. We would like to give massive thanks to our champions of the Red Moon, Martin Heuschober, Nastasia Raulerson, Simon Cooper, David, Julia, and David Hagberg for their generous support. And we would of course also like to thank all of our other patrons. Without your support, the show would not be possible. If you want to support our work, please check us out on Patreon. You can get access to bonus campaigns for Cult of Infinite Lost and Coriolis there, as well as get early and raw access to all of our recordings. You can also hear your name read on the show as a champion of the Red Moon, as well as play Cult with us. Most importantly, that support is what keeps the show going, so do check us out there. And remember, that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die.